You know, Mr. Trump, my question is really simple. This is a president that said hours before this attack in Paris that ISIS was contained. He referred to them as the JV team. He's talked about, or administration officials have talked about, overseas contingency operations and workplace violence. And meanwhile, this keeps happening again and again, and he can't say radical Islam. What do you... And now he's going to take in 10,000 Syrian refugees, even though our intelligence officials warn us that ISIS will infiltrate that population. How do you process this?
I mean, personally, I don't think he was meant for this job. You want to know the truth. The temperament is wrong. I watched that disastrous news conference yesterday. It was insulting. He wasn't angry at the killers, the murderers, the animals that did this horrible thing. He was angry at reporters, and I think some of the Republicans, frankly. Yeah. But he was angry at the reporters, and I just don't think it's not for him, and unfortunately we will have to suffer with it. But this job is not for him. That was a terrible performance yesterday and an embarrassment to the country.
The National Intelligence, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, said ISIS, it's likely they will infiltrate the refugee population. The State Department spokesman John Kirby has said as much. The Assistant FBI Director, the FBI Director James Comey, Michael Steinbach, Mike McCall said, the House Homeland Security Chairman. And here's more people warning that ISIS will infiltrate the Syrian population. Here's what they said.
The concern is in Syria, the lack of our footprint on the ground in Syria, that the databases won't have the information we need. So it's not that we have a lack of process, it's there's a lack of information.
And that obviously raises grave concern as to being able to do proper background checks of the individuals coming into the country.
Yes.
I don't obviously put it past the likes of ISIL to infiltrate operatives among these refugees.
We can only query against that which we have collected. And so if someone has never made a ripple in the pond in Syria in a way that would get their identity or their interests reflected in our database, we can query our database till the cows come home, but we're not going to, there'll be nothing show up because we have no record on that person.
There is some fear that some of these refugees may actually be posing as refugees, but they might actually be Al-Qaeda or ISIS terrorists trying to sneak into Europe or the United States. What do you make of that?
Well, certainly that's a possibility. I mean, you can't dismiss that out of hand.
Mr. Trump, if the president keeps insisting, as he does, to take in these Syrian refugees, is he not gambling with the lives of Americans? If Americans die, if what happens in Paris happens here, does he not end up having blood on his hands for not listening to his own intelligence officials?
Totally. It's a total disaster. The people are going to come in. I talked to you about this 2 weeks ago where we talked about the migration, how so many of the people in the migration were strong young men. You look at them. I'm saying, where are the women? Where are the children? We're taking in people. We have no idea who they are. They have no identification. They have no papers. They're creating papers. They're making up papers. And as you say, he doesn't even mention the word. He doesn't want to talk about radical Islamic terrorism. He refuses to say the words. And here's a man refuses to say those 3 words. And by the way, Hillary Clinton refuses to say the word. She's as bad as he is. But although I'm not so sure about that, can anybody be worse than what we have right now? So you have people coming in, and I heard as of this morning they're already missing 1 or 2 people. They came in and they're gone. They're missing. So I think it's a way that, you know, it could very well be the ultimate Trojan horse. We're going to have to see. Hopefully not. But thousands are coming in, and you mentioned 10,000. During the debate the other night, the Democratic debate, they talked about 65,000. I've heard they want to take in 250,000.
Yeah, but not all from Syria.
Crazy.
The 255,000 numbers over 3 years. They're not all necessarily from Syria, but we don't know where they're coming from.
We have no idea where they're coming from.
Dianne Feinstein, I'm hardly her biggest supporter, but she chastised the president by saying, ISIS isn't contained. I read the intelligence faithfully. ISIL is expanding. She's saying that. How does our president get that wrong? By saying that hours before the attack. How is that possible?
Well, not only that, if you look at Gitmo, 5 people released that same day, and they're back on in a private plane. They go back, and they're going to end up fighting very soon. They'll be fighting against us. He released them the same day. You would think that maybe, I mean, just maybe he could have waited or done it some other time. They shouldn't be released to start off with. But you look at what's happening, the way our country is being run in so many different ways. But this is now the hot topic. This is security. This is the ultimate problem. Because we need borders. Now all of a sudden everyone's saying, you know, Mr. Trump, I didn't agree with the wall. Now all of a sudden everyone's agreeing with the wall, the real wall, not the toy wall that they built, the real wall. And plenty of people are going to come through the southern border. You know that, and so do I. And they're going to be coming from the Middle East. They're going to be coming from places where it's not going to be a good situation. But people already, Sean, are missing.
You know, if you, that's true. They have the one person you're talking about in New Orleans in that specific case. You know, I look at your poll numbers, and in this week and last week, you had 2 of your biggest numbers, one in over 40%, 38%. And I wonder if this message is resonating. Daniel Horowitz of Conservative Review, I'll put it up on the side so our viewers can watch this, talks about the increase since 9/11 in the numbers of people we are taking in from Muslim countries. I would agree with the president. We're not at war with Islam. But the problem is there a clash of cultures if you grow up in a country under Sharia law where women can't drive and must cover themselves and women can't go out in public without a male relative, or 4 male eyewitnesses are needed for rape? Is there a conflict of cultures that makes it very difficult?
There certainly seems to be.
Yeah, well, explain.
There certainly seems to be.
And how should we factor that in when we're accepting in, and again, I'll put those statistics up while you're talking, how should we factor that in when we're taking in people from these countries? How do you ascertain whether they buy into the culture they came from or want to assimilate here?
Well, look at what's happening in Germany. I mean, Merkel's taken in all of these people. They're having riots in the street. They're having tremendous crime. She's made a terrible mistake. She's gone from being a very good and respected leader where the German people are beside themselves. They don't know what's happening. I mean, look at what she's done. Look at what so many have done. And then others, you know, you talk about the Gulf states. They're making a fortune. They won't take anybody. And I'm not sure, but I don't think they're putting up very much money either. But you look at what's happening in terms of this migration and in terms of what's coming, we have no idea. Will they assimilate? Are they going to be able to assimilate? I don't know that they even want to assimilate. And yet we take everybody. We don't know where they come from. We don't know what their crime record is. It could be wonderful and it could be a disaster. But I have a feeling that a lot of bad things are going to happen out of this. And if you remember a long time ago when this first started, I said, look, I have a big heart. I have as big a heart as anybody. And we should do maybe a safe zone or something over in Syria and get everybody else involved and have a big safe zone. But I tell you, if they come into this country, they're going out. If I win, they're going out. We can't take a chance. You know, if you take thousands of people, and again, I hear it's going to be many, many more than what you're talking about right now. But if you take thousands of people, Sean, all you need is a couple. You know, you don't need 25. You don't need 100. Look at the damage done in Paris with just a few people.
That's a great point. Is it worth the risk? If one American dies, is it worth the risk? And my answer is no. That we cannot afford to gamble with people's lives. Here's my next question. The Republicans in Congress, both the House and the Senate, you know, they have enumerated powers. They have the power of the purse. Would you urge them to use that power and defund the president's efforts to take in these Syrian refugees?
I certainly would. You know, it's sort of interesting. I was talking about it before. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. Nothing's happened since we took the Senate. So now we have the House, we have the Senate. Nothing's happened. It's the same exact story. In fact, in a certain way, with all of his executive orders, I think Obama's almost doing better. So we take the Senate. All of a sudden, we have majorities. Nothing's happened. I'm almost more disappointed. Maybe I'll take the word almost out. I am more disappointed in the Republicans than the Democrats, because at least the Democrats, we know where they're coming from, Sean. The Republicans have done nothing. Look at the budget that was just passed. They've done nothing.
I have said this many times. I'm more disappointed with the Republicans than I am Democrats. A lot of news was made after you suggested that there might be mosques in America that need to be shut down. Can you go into more detail?
Well, you're going to have to do something. They're coming out of some bad things are happening, and a lot of them are happening in the mosque, and you're going to have to do something. And I'm not the only one saying this. Other countries are saying this, frankly. But some really bad things are happening.
In other words,
somebody
if there are
said
terroristic threats, if we see that there's plotting and planning and talk of jihad and terroristic threats that we think might be talked about in these places, if we can prove that, in that case, you would shut them down.
Nobody wants to say this, and nobody wants to shut down religious institutions or anything, but, you know, you understand it. A lot of people understand it. We're going to have no choice. There's absolutely no choice. Some really bad things are happening, and they're happening fast. I think they're happening a lot faster than anybody understands, too. Certainly a lot faster than our president understands, because he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't get it. Refuses to even call it by its correct name.
All right, stay right there. Well, of the 21,000, I think 84 and 94 refugees from Syria we've taken in so far, 96% have been Muslim. Only 3% have been Christian. If there's no way to vet them, and they do have these sympathies, and our National Intelligence Director and others are saying ISIS will infiltrate, how is that hateful by definition?
It's been that way for a long time. In Syria, you have the Christians where their heads are being chopped off randomly and at will, and you have the Muslims who, I'm not saying they have a great life, frankly, but it's not as bad as what the Christians go through. I've been told by very, very good sources and people that really understand what's been happening over the last number of years, the hardest thing you can do is be a Christian in Syria and come into the United States. One of the easiest places in the entire world to come into the United States from is Syria if you're a Muslim. So if you're a Christian, you can't get into the United States. If you're a Muslim, it's one of the easiest ways to get into the United States from Syria. So I'll tell you what, there's something going on out there that is maybe you and I don't know about it, but it's becoming more and more obvious. And as far as Bernie Sanders, I thought you were going to put his quote. First of all, he's not going to win. He gave it away when he gave up the email situation, and probably she's protected. Hillary's protected by the Democrats, so she's not going to have problems. Well, she should have problems because everyone else has had big problems, and they've done much less. But Bernie Sanders' quote that I thought you'd have in there, that he blamed the Paris attack on global warming. That was the beauty.
Well, that's what he said in the debate.
I wanted to turn it off, but I had an obligation to watch the rest. He said during the debate, he said that the Paris attack is having to do with global warming. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. The third guy shouldn't even be on the stage. He was the mayor of Baltimore. You see how that worked out. He shouldn't even be on the stage. And frankly, Hillary, with her attitude, can't win. In my opinion, she can't win the election. She's weak as can be on illegal immigration. She is going to lose the election, especially if I run against her. But she's going to lose the election.
But they have been wrong so often. They said you get rid of Mubarak, even though they gave him money and F-16s and tanks, and you get rid of Gaddafi. Right. They said things would be better in the Middle East. They've gotten far worse. The president miscalculated. They're not the JV team. They've been wrong on so many different issues, so many times. I'll even put up on the screen, Senator Jeff Sessions has pointed out all these instances where we bring in immigrants, you know, from Uzbek and immigrants brought here from Kuwait and Ghana and Yemen and even the Boston bomber refugees, etc. All these people come in, and we'll put it on the side of the screen, and we have been wrong so many times. They get here and commit acts of terror against us. So we have been wrong in the past. I don't think Americans can have confidence in the system of vetting. Again, you can't ascertain what's in anybody's heart, can you?
Well, we have been wrong so much. And don't forget, for 2 years I've been telling you, take the oil, hit the oil, bomb the oil, take away ISIS's wealth, do it, do it, do it. They just started doing it after this horror show happened. They just started doing it. So now all of a sudden people are saying, Mr. Trump was right, Donald Trump was right. But now they're bombing, finally they're bombing the oil, and they're taking away some of the wealth. But they also have a lot of money coming in through a crooked banking system. The banking system is sending a lot of money to ISIS. We have to change that. Nobody knows more about the banking system than me, believe me.
Well, then my question for you.
They have a backward banking system.
Yeah, then my final question for you is, okay, you're elected president. This is a huge problem. How quickly could you fix this problem? How quickly does the wall get built and you take control of it? And give me the specific steps that you take and how fast it would get done.
First thing I'd do is I'd get everybody together, because we don't want to do this by ourselves, Sean. This is a problem. This is a worldwide problem. I'd get everybody together. That includes Russia, and I've been right about that, too. Now, all of a sudden, Putin's going wild with bombing ISIS, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Who needs to take the credit? Let him have some credit. But I would get everybody together, and I'd blast the hell out of them. They wouldn't be there long, believe me. I would blast the hell out of them. And you're right. The source of wealth, their primary source of wealth, is the oil that we should have kept when we left Iraq. We shouldn't have been in Iraq, but we should have kept it when we left Iraq. But their primary source is the oil. We should bomb the hell out of it. And now they're just starting to do that, but they're 2 years late. And interestingly, after Paris, all of a sudden, they start bombing sites that they knew about for a year and a half. Why didn't they bomb them a year ago? They're training sites, and they could have bombed them a year ago, but they started bombing them after the tragic events of Paris. So many things are wrong. We need leadership in the world now. You know, it's really a worldwide leadership. But boy, do we need leadership in our country.